Survival of the Sickest.
The book our group was chosen to read was Survival of the Sickest by Dr. Sharon Mollum and Jonathan Prince. In this medical maverick of diseases, Mollum discusses several diseases that have worked their way into the gene pool. In each chapter, a new disease is discussed with proven hypothesis and factual background information. Each disease is discussed in a way that can make it seem almost like a good thing, for many of such diseases can prevent other diseases from infecting a person. One of the diseases mentioned is hemochromatosis. This project will be focused around and happened to play a significant role in Mollum's life.
In the scientific novel, many diseases are explained and discussed. In the beginning chapters, diabetes is explained as the disease in which the body fails to remove excess sugars from the bloodstream. It suggests that the body selected this disease because the excess sugars act as an antifreeze against the cold in the Ice Age. The importance of cholesterol and vitamin D are the next chapter's topic, for it talks about the balance of the two to decrease the chance of folic acid depletion.
Fava beans and favism are the next central focus in Chapter 4. Favism, or glucose-6-phosphate dehydrogenase deficiency, is caused by consumption of the fava bean, in which oxidative stress and hemolytic anemia occur. After favism is addressed in the book, the next to come is the parasitic worm Dracunculus vedinensis, also known as the guinea worm. This worm is particularly harmful because it actually burns through the inhabitant's skin with acid once it decides to leave. During Chapter 7, the reader will learn about jumping genes, which can copy and paste DNA chunks.
After that portion of the book, obesity is explained as part of a genetic expression for storing more fat. This can be because of a parent's lack of nutritional eating, which may manipulate the genes into thinking the offspring needs a way to stay healthy, therefore increasing the chances of obesity.
In the end, the 2 points of the ancestors of humankind are addressed to the savanna theory and the aquatic ape theory. The savanna theory explains why humans stand upright and have little hair, while the aquatic ape theory explains the idea that humans come from a small population near the water. With all this information about all these diseases piled into one, the survival of the sickest is born.
The disease that we chose to become our topic is hemochromatosis, an inherited disease in which the body continues to load up on iron because the mechanism regulating the iron has broken down. This excess iron poisons the body's organs once it is stored. This eventually leads to heart arrhythmia, cancer, and cirrhosis. Research shows that classic hemochromatosis, or HFE, is caused due to the mutation in a gene. It was first described by Armand Trousseau in 1865, but correctly identified by a team of scientists in 1996.
The way that hemochromatosis spreads from person to person is genetically, because it is hereditary. There are many factors that go along with the way it's passed from parent to offspring, since there are different types of the disease. Hemochromatosis types 1, 2, and 3 are autosomal recessive, which means both copies of the gene in each cell have mutations. The parents of an individual with an autosomal recessive condition usually carry one copy of the mutated gene, but don't show any symptoms of the condition. These parents are called carriers, because while they don't reveal any signs of the disease, they have the chance of giving it to their children. Type 4 hemochromatosis is distinguished by its autosomal dominant inheritance pattern. With this type of inheritance, the person usually has only one copy of the altered gene to cause the disorder, but in rare cases they can be homozygous.
When it comes to hereditary diseases, there are several different ways of preventing it. One method is genetic counseling. In this process, patients at risk of giving an inherited disorder to their offspring are advised of the consequences and probabilities of transmitting it. By deciding not to have children, parents can prevent the disease from further spreading throughout the population.
Therapeutic phlebotomy is also a procedure of treatment that removes blood and iron from the body. This is done by inserting a needle into the patient's vein and then letting the blood flow through a tube that leads to a bag. The patient would then need frequent blood tests to check the iron levels as the treatment continues. The book mentions that doctors use the treatment of bloodletting for hundreds of years. For those that don't know what this is the process which doctors cut the patient so they bleed large amounts of blood. It is very similar to phlebotomy, but is much more unsafe.
This regular bleeding for hemochromatosis patients reduced the iron in their system to normal levels and prevented the iron buildup in the body's organs. The only negative effect was that some people died for being cut too deep.
The book suggested that natural selection is maintaining this genetic defect because it had conferred some benefit in the past with other diseases, like the bubonic plague. During this plague, infected people would have swollen lymph nodes bursting through their skin. However, people with hemochromatosis would have iron-starved macrophages that could resist the plague. This made them more likely to survive and produce offspring that inherited the same gene for hemochromatosis. Although it was helpful in the past, it has little to no benefits today.
Since the gene for hemochromatosis is dominant, the chances of it passing on to children is higher if both parents have said gene. In 2000, there were 857,878,059 cases. 2010 saw 968,265,687 cases, and in 2015 there are 1,025,469,512 cases currently reported. This is a 0.14% infection rate per population size. Our correlation coefficient is a 1 due to the graph having a positive slope. The novel states that the number of infected people is anticipated to rise as the population increases. The CC is determined by the slope of a graph's line. A negative slope would equal -1. No slope would have a 0, and a positive slope would equal 1. Our equation is y equals 1x minus 14, and our parent function is y equals x, with both equaling negative infinity and infinity.
Pandemics other than the Black Death have occurred in the past that relate to hemochromatosis. There's a series of outbreaks of the disease in Europe until the 18th or 19th century. There's further breeding of the mutation in the northern and western European populations every time the disease resurfaced in every generation or so. The effect it has now is that a large proportion of Europe has the disease or is a carrier of it. It has been shown in research that 1 in every 200 Europeans are affected by hemochromatosis.
The epidemic of Y. pestis is one of the first examples of biological warfare. When it started in 1347, plague victims were catapulted over the city walls of Kaffa. Out of fear, infected inhabitants are believed to have fled to Italy, which resulted in the disease spreading. It was again used as a biological weapon in World War II to cause a small epidemic. A Japanese airplane released rice that was infected with Y. pestis twice over Cochin, China. This purposeful action led to the death of 121 people. The bacteria had spread throughout the bloodstream, so when people who were affected by hemochromatosis were treated with bloodletting and had the Y. pestis, they were actually being treated for both diseases.
Another pandemic that has recently happened took place in California. There was a measles outbreak due to an infected traveler attending an amusement park, which inevitably led to the infection of 117 others in California alone.
Measles are not only in California, but in other states as well, for the United States had many more measles cases during 2014, with 644 cases from 27 states, which has made it a somewhat ever-growing epidemic.
Many steps are necessary in the case of a pandemic or epidemic. It is important for the government and hospitals to provide fair and efficient distribution and rationing of vaccines and medication. Taking the precaution of socially distancing oneself can prevent from the possible spreading of disease. A person in a high-risk area should also be protecting their individual privacy and disease surveillance by staying clean and clear of possible sites where they could get the disease.
Hospitals and clinics should also be required to ensure public health will be contributed to anyone who needs it. The area will also need to be on lockdown. If even one person leaves the infected zone, it could spread across the country or other countries. If one was trying not to prevent the situation from getting worse, then everything stated should be turned around. People should be closely monitored and in contact, and traveling should be promoted.
The world should consider putting forth more genetic counseling and tests for those at risk of spreading hemochromatosis to their children.
Throughout this project, we have learned that many diseases can be beneficial in aiding other harmful infection. My personal favorite chapter was when it talked about the parasitic guinea worm. Although it was rather unnerving and quite disgusting, I still seemed to be interested in it. One final thing I learned is that there just so happens to be a theory based on human evolution named after yours truly.
In this project, many new types of information have come into my attention. I've learned that despite not being a very major or fatal disease, hemochromatosis has still infected many millions of people. It has also come to my attention that many ancient forms of medical practice can still be used as modern-day patients, such as using leeches to drain blood from a patient.
So why would one's body select a gene that would kill us through iron loading by the time we reach what is now middle age? Because it would protect the body from diseases that kill long before that. Hemochromatosis became our topic because it caught our eye. It became a focus in the book despite having many other topics described. It wasn't just written with facts and probabilities. It was written with stories and recorded into history. But this is just one of many diseases that, while they look only harmful on the outside, actually hold a special benefit within.